All right, welcome back. I haven't uploaded content on this channel in a while, so it's good to be back. Now, some of you may have noticed that I usually create content for this channel when I'm sort of going through something and my spirit is not quite right. I got some things on my mind that I need to get off, and this will be another one of those videos. And we might be here for a while, so grab a cup of coffee, bowl of popcorn, and kick back. On this video, I want to deal with racial stereotypes and the life of Tariq Nasheed and how that relates to all black men. I recently had a discussion with my sister. Talked to my sister, and I haven't seen her in a long time, but we keep in contact. We text each other. We call each other on the phone. And generally, they don't know much about my personal life. They know that I'm single. And they know that I work. They know where I work, stuff like that. They don't know much about my personal life. So this time when I talked to her, I said, you know what? Let me go ahead and fill in my sister. She's my older sister. Go ahead and fill her in on some details of my life. Let me open up, and I trust her. It's my sister. Let me open up and sort of interact with her, fill her in on my life. So I told her, I tried to explain to her why I'm single. I'm 45 years old and I'm single. I don't have any kids. Me, right now. So I thought, you know what? Let me go ahead and tell her why. Now, single, keep in mind, I'm only talking about marriage. I've had relationships, but I've never considered marriage with any of the women that I've been with. Not one of them. Well, I can't say that. One of my earliest girlfriends, I thought about tying the knot. But none of the others. So as you all know, there's different standards when you're talking about the wife or the mother of your children, because that's what we're talking about. We're finally talking about, hey, why I don't have kids. And I tried to explain to her. I said, look, I have standards. Me, I have a lot of self-discipline. The mother of my child has to share in that discipline. I explained to her that I'm a raw vegan. Now, she believed that there are more vegans today than there have ever been. And that might be true. But it's very rare to find a raw vegan. I mean, honestly, it's very rare to find a vegan, period. Somebody who does not eat meat or dairy. Do you know how many things they put dairy? They put milk into everything. Milk and eggs. They put it in almost everything. Stuff you wouldn't imagine contains milk and eggs. So when I go to the grocery store, I basically go to the produce department and then I check out. I'm eating nothing but green leafy vegetables, spinach, kale, broccoli, and fruit. And I'm out of there. I might get one of those, plant-based protein bars, but very rarely. And my future wife has to share that lifestyle because she has to be pet free. Just think about how large of a percentage that cancels out for me. No pets, and no meat or dairy, well over 50% of all the women are canceled out just based on that alone here in the United States. No meat, no dairy, and no Christian, no Muslim. I'm sorry. I can't work. I definitely could not work with a Christian. And really, I couldn't work with a Muslim. No disrespect to my Christians and Muslims out there. Listen, no disrespect. I'm not going to bash you. I'm very respectful. I got a lot of love for people. I don't care what religion you are, as long as you're a good person. But when I'm talking about the mother of my child, I'm going to want my child. I'm going to want to pass my beliefs to my child. Not beliefs that have been passed to us. Does that make sense? I hope so. Now, of course, my beliefs are built on the beliefs that many of you share. My pickings are slim. They're very slim. No pets, no meat, no dairy. Why am I so stern about that? Because a woman who eats meat and dairy, who has a pet, especially a dog, she has foreign parasites in her body. All meat eaters, people who eat meat, dairy, and especially on top of that, has a pet, they all have foreign as in zoonotic parasites all throughout their body, both microscopic and visible. They have an entirely different body, because understand, if you're my wife, we're going to share the same body. Whatever you got, I'm going to have. Whatever I have, you going to have. And I have a parasite-free body. Do y'all know? Pretty much, they've estimated some 80% of Americans have parasites. And almost all of them, virtually all of them, are zoonotic, meaning they come from animals. They're not natural to humans. Parasites all throughout your body. Worms. Be clear on what I'm talking. I'm talking about worms, physical worms all throughout your body. Do y'all know those worms can't live in an alkaline environment? They can only live inside of your body if you consume meat and dairy. So I'm very cautious. I refuse to deal with someone who eats meat and dairy and owns pets. Long story short, my pickings are slim. Well, and on top of that, I have another restriction. I have another restriction that I informed her, that I would only get married to a black American female. Now I've seriously narrowed the pickings down. Black American female only. So I'm looking for a black American female who is a vegan, no meat, no dairy, who is not a Christian, not a Muslim, and who is not a pet owner. Yeah, I have not met one person, one woman like that, or a man in person ever. There's a bunch of them online, yeah. Yeah, the internet, and to be honest, even online, there are very few raw vegans in the world, even online. So I shared this information with her. And she responded, she was like disturbed. She was like, yeah, I'm worried about you. What, you mean you haven't at least dated a raw vegan yet? You haven't dated no raw vegan? Like, she said it like she was shocked. And I got the impression, I'm not saying that this is what she said, I got the impression that she was trying to sort of suggest or ask if I was homosexual. Because, we were having a discussion and the subject came up about how in the media, in entertainment, homosexuality, the trans life and homosexuality in general is being heavily pushed to black males in the media and entertainment industry. Heavily, heavily. So, their brother is single with no kids in an era where there's a bunch of homosexuality being pushed. I can understand them suspecting, I wonder, is our brother gay or something like that? Okay, under these circumstances, it's too bad. But the thing is, I can't blame her. And on top of that, I don't fully know where she was coming from. But I suspect that she is or was suspicious. Is he gay? It was one of those discussions. Is he gay? And then we started to talk about how I'm not a homeowner yet. And she was sort of like really giving me a lecture on the importance of being a homeowner. A homeowner and a father. You're 45 years old and you're not a homeowner and you're not a father yet. You don't have a wife. What's wrong with you? Like, hey, that's a flaw. You don't want to live that type of life. You don't want to be a failure. You have to at least be a homeowner and have a family. If not, what in the world is wrong with you? Now, some of you might co-sign with that, might think that's reasonable. I think that's unreasonable in today's world to expect that out of everybody. And if you're not a homeowner who's married and you're 45 years old, then hey, something's wrong with you. Because based on my life, it seems like something is wrong with the majority of people in general. Being a raw vegan, I'm pretty sure most people would like to be able to do it and still enjoy it because of the health benefits. People are fully aware of how healthy it is to eat like that. If you only eat fruit and vegetables, come on, man. These people out here, they would love to be on a healthy diet like that and still enjoy it just as much as they do their steak, their meats, and their dairy. It's just very difficult. And I'm saying that as a raw vegan because it took me years to get to this point of trying new diets, then tweaking them, make it a little more healthy, to one day I'm like, you know what, forget it. I'm just about to go all out and eat like a herbivore. And it's difficult. But I'm not going to put none of that poison into my child. I refuse. And I cannot have the mother of my child eating meat full of foreign zoonotic parasites. Not just parasites, people. When you are a pet owner and you eat meat and dairy, you got all kinds of bacteria and viruses floating around in your body. That E. coli, that's zoonotic. All types of bacteria that is present in dogs, cats, and meat and dairy, they're flowing all throughout our bodies. And trust me, it changed the whole chemistry of your body. I can't do it. There's not something wrong with me. I'm just very, very self-disciplined. And forgive me, but I demand that same discipline from the mother of my child or children. I refuse to hurt my kids. So I don't know if she believed me or not. No, maybe she still thinks I'm a flawed suspect, homosexual suspect. I don't know. But I felt bad. I felt like I was being wrongly accused. Like I just didn't feel good. My energy was bad. because of it felt like she was looking at me as if her whole perception of me was based on what I don't have. I hope I'm making sense. It felt like her entire perception of me was shaped by what I don't have, by my flaws, or what she perceives to be my flaws. And that did not feel good. Because I come from the hood. I come from the poor, but hardworking. A lot of my family members ended up in gangs, prisons, dead, or still out here running the streets, in and out of prison, addicted to hard drugs. But not me. I was able to avoid that lifestyle. I picked up a strong work ethic where everybody knew me as the guy who always had a car. I couldn't go without a car. And I knew in order to be a car owner, I had to keep a job. So I developed a strong work ethic. Not only that, every job I've ever had, I've made sure that I did the best that I could possibly do. I started to view my job like the gym. And when you go to the gym, you go hard or you don't go at all. And I became a good worker, to the point where every job I had, I moved up fast and easy. Because I was willing to do the hardest jobs. And I was willing to do the hardest jobs anytime. It got so bad where the job I'm at now, everybody else would rotate on different jobs except for me. I did the same job every day because it was so hard, nobody else wanted to do it. And I did this because it kept me in shape. Because I used to hate to go to the gym. So I would go into jobs looking for the hardest job. It just always bothered me to go to the gym. I never would feel like it. Every now and then I'd be motivated, but there's too many days where I didn't feel like it. Where if I just go to work, hey, I'm getting paid to work out now. Like, okay, isn't that a dream job? To get paid, to get in shape? So I developed the right mentality to be an incredible worker. And it helped me to move up in the different jobs that I've had. The job I'm at now, I've been here almost 7 years. And I've been able to move up. And I feel good about that. I feel really good about that. My sister also pointed out that I make good money. The job that I have now, I've earned it. I had to work for years to reach the pay that I get now. And I still have to work a lot of overtime. Overtime, that's part of my job. Right? So I look at myself, my perception of myself is far more based on how far I've come, what I'm doing well, what I'm capable of doing in the future, and whether or not I'm doing the things right now to reach that point. So, sometimes I assume that other people are the same way. And I'm not saying that my sister is not. Maybe she is. But it didn't feel like she was. It felt like I was being judged based on my failures. Like, yeah, you're doing a whole lot better than most of the people you went to school with. and most of your peers, family and all, but you still ain't no homeowner. You still ain't no father. You still single. What's wrong with you? And I think a lot of people can relate to this. A lot of people are like this. And for me, that just feels like a very, very negative mentality. I couldn't have someone in my circle like that, because we're all aware of our downfalls, of our failures. We're all aware of it. No matter who you talk to, even if they're millionaires, they can tell you that they could have done a lot of things better. They'll tell you about a lot of mistakes they made. Like me, of course, I've reflected on my upbringing. And I understand how much better off I would be if I were to do a lot of different things when I was young. There's just a lot of things I did not get into. Didn't have the guidance, didn't have the interest. My life could be a whole lot better. I could be a billionaire by now had I not, had I done certain things that I did not do. But I cannot dwell on what I didn't do. I can't dwell on my shortcomings. I'm not going to even entertain. I've done what I needed to do, and that is to understand it, understand where I went wrong, find the lesson in it, and set it to the side, and replace it with what I'm doing now and where I want to be in the future. Now, here's another thing. My sister is aware that I have created income for myself that doesn't come from my official job. I've created an extra independently created income based on conducting business on my own, off the clock, where I earn an extra few $1,000s a year, self-generated. Why can't I be defined based on that? Because very few people have even done that. Most people who have a job, that's their only source of income. I know because I talk to everybody. Their only source of income is their job. You got to be creative in some way, creative, consistent, and you got to put forth a lot of effort, time to create your own source of income and have that income be consistent. I've done that. So I'm taking a step in the right direction. So I want to be surrounded by people who want to build on that momentum. And I see this with Tariq Nasheed. And maybe it's a part of the racial stereotype. My sister also mentioned when I was talking to her, I forget why she brought it up, but she said that, yeah, I'm not going to sit back and talk about how the white man is holding me down. She's aware that I'm into Black history. I suspect that she views me as, one of those pro-Black people who, I don't know, to be honest. I don't know how she views me in that sense, but she knows that I'm into Black history, and I'm into politics, things that's related to Black Americans. I get involved with different rallies and things like that, different causes. He knows that. And, she briefly mentioned, like, yeah, I'm not going to be one of those black people who sit back and talk about how the white man holding me down. That stereotype right there is what I want to deal with. I want to deal with that stereotype. This stereotype this has very little to do with white people. I don't even know if white people made up this stereotype. This stereotype of where certain black people who are into black history, these types of black people sit around and complain about how the white man holding them down all the time. I think I briefly talked about this before. I believe that is a stereotype. It's a stereotype. I've been around black people who are into black history, or whatever you want to call it, the conscious community, which the conscious community is basically a portion of the black population who've been thoroughly educated on history and to an extent politics, both in historical and current politics. That's all it means. It's not nothing mystical and all advanced about it. I've been around these types of people, black people like myself, for over 2 decades now. I first started getting into it when I was around 24 years old. I'm 45 now. It's more like 21 years now. I have never heard a black person say anything like that I can't get up because the white man holding me down. Oh, I ain't got no job yet because the white man hold me down. Oh, the white man. Those who are not in our circles, they seem to co-sign with these types of racial stereotypes. Now, let me be clear. My sister did not even know what the Hidden Color series was. She never heard of the Hidden Colors. Okay, now y'all already know what the deal is. She had never heard of Tariq Nasheed or the Hidden Colors. But let me tell you what she was familiar with, that she pointed out to me, that disappointed her, and rightfully so. She pointed out how these rappers who are very influential in the black community, have a very influential position and platform, how they push nothing but degeneracy, nothing but filth, self-defeating lifestyles. And she said, where are the public figures that are pushing something positive? And I mentioned Tariq Nasheed. And she said, who is that? I mentioned the Hidden Colors. What is that? And I tried to explain to her. She also pointed out how this gender war between black males and black females is so popular. That it's becoming more and more common. And I tried to explain to her, I said, that's not true. I said that the world, for the most part, it's going to look like whatever you pay attention to. If all you pay attention to is the gender war discussions, then you're going to think that that's all that there is. You know, she don't spend time in spaces like we do, where we compliment, where there is no gender war going on. The world is what you make it. It's largely your perception and based on what you're paying attention to. And for me, it struck me as if she simply focused on the negatives far too much. focusing on what's wrong with us, what we don't have, far too much, to the point where that shaped really how you interact and perceive other people. I think that's very dangerous. I think that is very, very dangerous. Now, a lot of people talk about Tariq Nasheed. A lot of people try to criticize Tariq Nasheed. Oh, you're a former pimp. You got to be stupid. You listen to him. He used to pimp women. He wrote a book where he's trying to teach people how to be pimps. He's disrespectful. You heard Roland Martin, all this kind of stuff. Oh, look at what he did back in the 1990s. Oh, you're crazy. You listen to him. And it struck me that no matter how successful I am, I can just look at Tariq Nasheed and his life and tell, no matter how successful you are, there's always going to be that group of people out there, your own people, who are going to try to tear you down, who are going to try to define you based on what they perceive to be your flaws. Even though we got examples, many examples of black men turning themselves around, everybody respects Malcolm X. Malcolm X used to be a pimp, a hustler. But yet when he turned his life around, nobody continued to accuse him of being a pimp. Let's say Tariq was pimping. I don't care what nobody say. And listen, I've been on YouTube for over 2 decades now. I don't clout chase. I know that that's against the rules. You don't do that. I'm old school. And those of you who really, really know me, you know I've never had to clout chase to gain an audience. So I'm not doing this to clout chase at all. I don't agree with everything that anybody says. But I don't have to agree with everything you say to support you. I support all of Tariq's projects. I support Dr. Umar Johnson's projects. I'm telling you, every project Tariq puts on, I support. But you look at him, black men, you know, no matter how successful you are, you're going to have this group of people who define you based on what they perceive to be as flaws, no matter what you're doing today. You look at what Tariq, his rapper days, his so-called pimp days, what does that have to do with him today? Today, he's married with a family. And he is not into pimping or pimp books. He turned away from the pimp, the macking lifestyle. And instead, he said, you know what? I want to create movies about black history. That's all Tariq does, is make movies about black historical figures. History that's not in the mainstream history books. That's all. And in doing so, he has been referred to in the most derogatory and disrespectful ways you can imagine. Listen, I know as a black male, no matter how much success I have, I'm primarily, in the eyes of a portion of people, going to be defined based on what they perceive to be as flaws. Let's be honest, people. Black males, let's be honest. And again, I don't clout chase. Tariq Nasheed is a black American hero. He's a hero for black males. He's a black male success story. He did whatever in his past, and he turned away from it. And the big thing is, he turned down the opportunity to make millions more dollars than he makes now. Those offers that he was getting during his Mac Lessons days, where they were making him huge offers to deal with relationships, do you know how far he would have blown up by now? He would have been mainstream. And instead, he said, let me go independent and deal with Black history and help inform Black people of their history. And it worked. But granted, today, he's not making as much money as he would be had he went the MTV route, the Hollywood route. You follow? And instead, going the route that he went, he's made himself a target. He's already had his home swatted. He's literally, now I've touched on this before, putting his life on the line, big time. He's saying things that most Black males wouldn't. With your face on camera, he has basically blackballed himself from Hollywood, period. With the things that he has said with his YouTube channel. He can't just be mainstream no more. So he almost exclusively depends on his people, because he's earned his people enough of Black people's trust, which is the way it should be. That's a success story. He's not pimping. Now he's married with kids. That's a success story. Even though it really doesn't matter. That's irrelevant. I mean, even if he was single, he ain't no relationship advisor anyways. But he's still a victim of stereotypes. You see videos all over YouTube created by Black people. And their whole goal is to drag Tariq through the mud, to degrade his very existence. Like I said, you don't see other groups who do this with listen, you may as well say it now. Don't wait till people die to give them their flowers. Give it to them while they're still alive. Let's be real, man. Most people are too afraid to be out here talking about white supremacy. To be out here talking about and pointing out and giving even names, saying that there are white supremacist gangs in law enforcement all across the United States. I mean, literally, Tariq and many others, they're putting their life on the line. Putting their life on the line to educate people. But he's still a victim of stereotypes. I recently watched some of these videos that have been produced about Tariq, his haters. But some of these people are people who call themselves conscious or activists. That's another thing. My sister, when she was talking to me, she was putting emphasis on Black people. It's like, this don't point the finger at white people. It's Black people. Black people are the problem. Black people got the problem. And she also says, I don't want to be one of those black people who sit around saying white man keeping me down. Black people, black people, black people. And it's like, at a certain point, you got to wonder if they ever look at the world in an inverted way from what they currently do. Now, I can understand looking at the dysfunction of black people, but in all fairness, you have to also question the society that they grow up in. I've never heard a conscious black person complain about the white man holding them down, ever. Every single so-called conscious black person I've ever known was hardworking. These were working people, whether it be for themselves or for someone else, but they were working. They wasn't criminals, nowhere near lazy. And the thing is, once you become so-called conscious, you start to think of a whole lot more ways to make money. That's when the ideas start popping into your head. That's when you realize that you're not really being held down. That's when you realize your opportunities and your potential. Because you'd be like, hey, I can do this, I can do that. It's a huge learning process. We don't sit around complaining about how somebody keeping us down. We don't do that. And it bothers me that so many people believe that just because I research black history and just because I support, different rallies and different laws. Yes, I support reparations. Just because I support these things don't mean that I'm sitting around talking about how the white man keeping me down. It's like, what? Where in the world did that even come from? Where'd that stereotype come from? We talk about black people always been hard workers. Quite obviously, we were working during slavery, but we was working hard after slavery as well. In fact, we started working harder after slavery. Started working harder. And we've generally been a hard-working people ever since we've been here. I have no idea where this stereotype came from of the lazy black man with no job sitting around complaining about how the white man keeping him down. That just makes no sense to me. Now, just because I point out the fact that there are white supremacist gang members in law enforcement, that don't mean I'm sitting back saying that the white man keeping me down. That's any intelligent person. You better be aware of something like that. If you're a black person, you better be mindful of the fact that law enforcement is flooded with real white supremacist gang members, where many of them are incentivized. They get rewarded when they harm a black person. They move up in rank. They are able to join clubs only after they've inflicted some type of physical harm on a black person. Yeah, that better concern you. That way, when you're pulled over for something, you're not acting a fool. You understand the true type of person you could be dealing with. You could possibly be dealing with. Now, I'm not saying that all of the police officers are in white supremacist gangs, but it has been proven by law enforcement officers themselves that police departments all across the country are flooded with white supremacist gang members. Just because I point out the fact that Native Americans received reparations, the Japanese received reparations, other groups have received reparations, and by all fairness, black people deserve reparations. Just because I point that out don't mean I'm sitting back jobless, being lazy, talking about the white man keeping me down. Anything you say that's related to black, that's related to race, anything about race come out your mouth, people automatically assume that you are a complainer. Oh, you're lazy. You sit back and you don't do what you're supposed to do. You sit back and be lazy because you say the white man holding you down. That's a horrible, horrible stereotype that gots to go. It gots to go, man. Ain't got no room for that. No room for that. I'm telling you from experience. Black people who research black history we are not lazy people. That's proof that we ain't lazy. It take energy to do all the research that we do. You got to have serious motivation. That's why quite often you find the black people who are history students, they tend to be on healthy diets. There's nothing lazy about us at all. Just because we research history so that we can function correctly today. All groups have to do that. How you operate in the world today should be based on what you've been through. There ain't nothing radical about that. And that's the big problem with the unconscious portion of our population. They think it's radical to read. That it's somehow radical to know your history. You better know your history. Because let me tell you, everybody else does. I'm not going to be one of these people who are out here in the world where people who not even black know my history better than me. At that point, you just food. They can run all kinds of games on you. When you're ignorant and don't know your history, you're just food for predators. That irks me, man. That stereotype. As if I don't even hear so-called conscious people spewing race hatred for white people. They automatically also, that's another stereotype, that we are a bunch of radicals who hate white people. Think all white people are devils. You'd be hard pressed to find even conscious black people like it. I don't even like to call them conscious. Fellow history students. That's one thing they all have in common. Or the people in my circle, the black people in my circle. One thing we got in common, we know history. And that's the glue that holds us together. That's another reason why I can only marry a black American woman. She has to be within my culture. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not racist. There's nothing racist about wanting to marry and have kids with somebody in your own group. That's a personal thing. That's the only thing I'm comfortable with. It's troublesome, man. It seriously bothers me. We don't sit around complaining about white people. We don't sit around talking about how white people keeping us down. And honestly, we're just moving. We operate the way people should. Be aware of politics, of the world around you, of your history, where you come from. Be aware of the things that's going on that affects your life. I hear over there in California now that they're talking about what, $200,000 reparation checks for people in California. I feel like we're making progress. That's another thing. Tariq supports reparations for black Americans. He's probably, as far as being a public figure, he's one of the most popular public figures who pushes for it. Several politicians even consider him a factor in having influence on how much support the Democrats get. There is a crowd of people, or black people out here. We're not into no gender wars. That was a big reason why I had to back up off of that old channel of mine. because a lot of the haters started to think that I was on some anti-black female crusade. That group of people is a problem. The people involved in gender wars to the point where they're talking about, hey, you know, black boys should be aborted. Gender wars where they're talking about, hey, I don't date black women. You're masculine. You look like a man. Okay? If that's your thing, knock yourself out. I'm not a part of that crowd. I don't support no gender wars. I don't care what nobody say. The gender war crowd is not the biggest crowd in the black American population. Who's the gender war leaders? They're not the biggest crowd. And there's always going to be a degenerate crowd, no matter what group you belong to. You can't allow that crowd of degenerates to be the face of your group. And you can't allow yourself to project the idea that everyone in the group is like that. You know, it gets to the point where if you only focus on a person's failures, on what they don't have, then they'll never be successful in your mind. Or maybe as long as you get money, maybe if I suddenly became a millionaire and I got married and had kids, you can be a millionaire, get married and have kids, and still have a negative impact on the world, on the people around you, people you come into contact with. Is that success? If you're leading people against their own best interests, you're having a negative impact on other spirits, is that really successful? You know, I think the ability to have a positive impact on people is a form of success. I enjoy it. That's why, I jump online and I have discussions with the public. I never push negativity, ever. What is success? It's not all about money, having money, and it's not all about having a family. And it was unfortunate too, because my sister, she shared a photo of my nephews, her sons. They live in Thailand. She shared a photo of them with me. And when I saw it, I sent her a message. I said, I hope to have a family someday as well. That was my way of letting her know I'm still open, not only open to having kids, I want to have kids before I leave this earth. That was my way of letting her know, because I never even told her that before. Like, you know what? I'm going to take this time to let her in on something. I'm going to let her know that I haven't given up on being a father. I look forward to being a father. But when I shared that information with her, it was like a negative response. It felt like a negative response, like, well, why aren't you? When you trust people with sensitive material about yourself, you're vulnerable at that point. They could use what you share with them and, project the idea or imply that, hey, you got mental issues. And you got issues. And you're not a homeowner. And look at this. And look at that. Black people coming from the mud, man. Most successful black people, they don't have a squeaky clean past. Look at Judge Mathis. He used to be a gangster. He was a criminal. And when you talk about black people, most of us come from rough beginnings. But yet, the past is the first thing people point towards when they want to tear you down. No matter how much good you're doing in the world, there's always going to be those people who look at you based on what they perceive to be flaws. Quite often, these are stereotypes. Stereotypes. Yeah. Right? Shout out to everybody in the room. Man, I've been on here almost an hour already. Not to say they won't. People are close to me. Yeah. BK in the building. Shout out to Moochie. Yeah. Yeah. See, the thing here is, I don't expect perfection from black people. You know, I understand where we come from. But if I see that you're doing a lot better than you were yesterday, I'm going to try to encourage whatever behavior that caused that. You know, I look at some of my family members today. Yeah, they got flaws. We all got flaws. But I can't dwell on what I don't have. I can't dwell on my mistakes or nothing like that. Now, don't get me wrong. It's important to be aware of them. You got to be aware of the mistakes you made in the past so that you don't make them again, which I'm not. I'm not making the same mistakes I made in the past. But you cannot dwell on them. You really can't dwell on them. That's really what it seems like, what hurts you. What's that girl's name? Cynthia G, for example, is a real good example. She goes on about how much black men are failures. Black men are failures. You're failures. You're failures. You're conquered. You're powerless. You're powerless. And she does that to the point where she does not see anything good that black males do. I made a video where I went through a bunch of really strong businesses owned by black males. There are hundreds, if not thousands. What am I talking about? There are thousands of black male business owners all across the United States today. Most of my job I'm at now, it's like at least 50% black. And about 98% males who work here. I don't see lazy black people. All the black people I've known over the past few decades have been hardworking. When I jump on the internet and I look for different items, I easily can find a black business owner who sells them. So I pay attention to positive. These girls in Cynthia G's fan base who hate black men and they say, oh, abort them. Abort black babies. Stay away from your bullet bags and all this kind of stuff. Guess what? I don't pay attention to those black women. I pay attention to the black women who are the exact opposite of that. Who are like me. That I'll either marry a black American female or I won't get married at all. It's not because there's something horrible or wrong with other races of women. That's not it at all. That's just my personal preference. You're talking about a child, my seed that I'm raising. I want a cultural component there from both parents. That's just what I want. Nothing to do with hatred for other groups. But man, oh man, it's just hard to keep people positive these days. Yeah, I want children. Who? Of course. Me personally, I personally believe you can't even have an afterlife unless you reproduce. Like if you become reincarnated, it's going to be with, somebody you're related to, somebody with your blood, you know? So yeah, of course, in a perfect world, but this is not a perfect world. Like I said, black Americans, we coming from the mud. You're almost guaranteed to have some questionable things in your past if you become successful. But you can't dwell on those failures or those shortcomings. No matter who you talk about, they could always be better. Like Tariq Nasheed, for example. He's not a billionaire. But don't nobody define him based on the fact that he's not a billionaire. Can you imagine how crazy that would be? No matter, most people, there are a bunch of people above you and a bunch of people beneath you. If you only focus on those that are above you, it won't be motivation. Eventually, you're going to get depressed. You're going to get depressed. You're going to start looking at yourself in a negative way, like a failure. Put it like this. Don't you think it's mentally healthier to look at how far you've come? Don't you think that's a better source of motivation? To look at the progress that you've made, which is progress that most of your peers don't make, rather than focus on the people who are above you, who are more quote unquote successful than you. Yes, it makes sense to be motivated by successful people, of course. But you have to balance that out. If not, you're eventually going to view yourself as a failure. It's going to lead to depression, and you're going to be a negative person. Because not only will you look at yourself and define yourself based on what you don't have, you're going to do it with other people. Whenever you talk, no matter how much they've accomplished, no matter how far they've come, no matter how much discipline they've shown, people literally, nobody I know, especially nobody in my family, has done some of the things that I've done. There ain't no raw vegans in my family. I view that as an accomplishment. That's an advancement for my family. I can pass that on to my offspring. A very healthy diet. Even, working out. I've been working out for years. I take a lot of discipline. Just holding down a job for as long as I have. A lot of my peers can't say that. I'm not a drug addict. Drug free. I'm relatively healthy. I want to be defined based on that. I understand that there's a lot. Everybody knows that they could have more money. You know what I mean? There's no reason to dwell on that. Everybody knows that they could do a whole lot better. But you can't have no, positive interaction with people if their shortcomings is what shapes your perception of them, if that makes sense. Now, I'm not saying that that's how my sister, I'm saying that it's possible. I'm not sure of what's going through her mind, but I consider the possibility. So I wanted to touch on that subject in general. Yeah, it really bothers me. It really bothers me. And this may be the case, I'm quite sure it's the case for any people in any group, where no matter how much success you have, you're always going to have a group of people trying to tear you down. But because so many of us come from poverty, it's more common for the people who are at the bottom to try to pull the successful people back down to where they were. That doesn't have anything to do with race. That's how a lot of groups are. You know? Yeah, it has always bothered me, the slander that people throw at Tariq, because I look at myself. I always put myself in his shoes. Like, okay, if I continue on this path and I'm independently successful, I'm going to have my own people trying their hardest, dedicating their life to tearing me down. Even with Umar Johnson, I made a video. I was upset. I felt like he was running a scam with that school. And I felt like he was using the money. It was just, it rubbed me the wrong way. But I removed that video because, look, man, if he does have a substance abuse issue or problem, the bottom line is he's still trying to do something. I mean, I don't believe that school is a complete scam. I just don't. And even if it is, even if that is his source of income, let's just say that's his source of income, and he's using it just to always be able to get donations. I feel like he's put out a lot of very useful and important information, Dr. Umar Johnson, in regard to the school system, public education. What is it? It's like it's really a whole different world. Putting kids on Ritalin and defining them as learning disabled. Umar has offered a whole wealth of important information that people can use forever, long after Umar leaves this earth. So my thing is to just give people props based on the good that they do. If you don't have the best personal life, that's you. That don't affect my life. You're not having a negative impact on me or anybody else. But I've grown more into a person who tries to focus on the positive, focus on people's strengths, be aware of the mistakes that we've made so that we don't make them again, but don't dwell on the negatives. Just do what you need to do right now to grow and sidestep whatever mistakes you made in the past. Yeah. So I just wanted to hop on here and babble about that. I hope my sister probably find this video. I hope she don't. If she does, I hope she don't take it the wrong way. But had to get that off my chest. So I hope to see you all on the next live stream.